So I am coming to you live from my hometown, Southport, North Carolina. Clarendon Avenue is where I was raised, and I'm at the corner of Clarendon Avenue and St. George Street. Further down in front, that's all my old stomping grounds. Where that's Snooks' house. That used to be where Snooks lived. Beyond those trees is Ralph and Ivory Parker. This pink house right here wasn't always pink. It used to belong to Miss Maddie B. Smith, who was the kindergarten teacher, and she taught everybody. This blue house next to it used to be Miss Ruby's house. And then down this way used to be my grandma's house, my Aunt May's house, my Aunt Inez's house. Of all the used to be's on this corner, there's one thing that is definitely not changed. Irene B. Hankins still lives right here. And most importantly, my daddy's house, the home of Willie W. Parker, is still here. And this year, my daddy will celebrate being 82 years old in August, and we are so grateful that he's still alive. But take a walk with me through my hometown. Clarendon Avenue and St. George Street is where we hung out all our lives, playing baseball in the street. The manhole cover that's right over here was actually one of the bases. That's how cool it was to live in this place. In a lot of movies, you see Southport, you don't see any black people. But trust and believe, we have been here for generations. So today I'm here for Juneteenth and Father's Day weekend. And so I'm just gonna walk down. This is another view of my dad's house. This front part is where the old house used to be. We lived in a house that was very small with 2 bedrooms, and then hard work and the blessings of God, and my daddy built this brick house right here that has 4 bedrooms, or had 4 bedrooms, and 2 full bathrooms and a living room, and he's done some things to it to customize it over the years, but it's home, be it ever so humble. There is absolutely no place like 418. So let's see, let's move on a little bit. Right beside Miss Ruby's house, the blue house, there used to be Bogus's house. Bogus was, I don't know what his name was. I don't know if we were related, his real name, but I know Bogus. He was my grandfather's friend, and he always had weird stuff in his house. That's the thing I remember about him. This house that is under construction right now used to be my grandmother's sister's house. It used to be yellow. Used to be. I know, this is what gentrification looks like. So this other greenhouse is where my Aunt May, and I actually wrote about Aunt May in my book, Random Acts of Writing. The story of little Deirdre Renee and Aunt May talking about integration and stuff like that. It's a fictional story, but Aunt May was a real person. I don't want to get these people's cars because they think I'm trying to do something crazy. There's an empty lot that I want to show you, which is where my grandmother's house used to be. This spot right here, this empty lot, is where Grandma's house used to be. And some of my earliest memories are in Grandma's house. This house next to it is my cousin Tim's house. And then over here, this used to be Al Mary's house. I think her last name was Phelps. Al Mary and Grandma and Aunt Inez were all friends. And because they were all friends, their children and grandchildren were all friends. We were all in this neighborhood together. And we hung out in places that we called under the trees, where the foliage, the greenness, whatever you want to call it, was so thick that the sun couldn't get through. This is one of the places where we used to hang out all the time. Right here beside Al Mary's house. And we would have, that golf cart that's irrelevant. But anyway, we used to hang out over here and play all day, and we were back and forth between here and here and here and all through here. It used to be just like woods, and we could pick plums and grapes and all that kind of crazy stuff, and we used to steal apples from this one guy's house that's further down this street. This is Caswell Avenue. So anyway, I'm just going to walk a little further because I want to show you one of the favorite under the trees places where we could go when we were little kids, and it was still in our neighborhood because everybody in this area up and down St. George Street was related to us. So we could come from down there, Clarendon Avenue, at the end of that block where that stop sign is, if you can see it. We could come from there and come down here. Grandma's house was right there where that empty space is. This used to be, where Tim's house is now, used to be my great-grandfather's cafe. A store where he sold stuff like food, and there was a bar, and you could get lunch and all that kind of stuff. But this right here, of course there were different benches, but there were always benches. And this is, look at how thick and stuff the trees are. Look at these trees. And the sun can barely get through. And we would sit out here and play for hours and hours and hours. And then in the cool of the evening, when the kids would go in, the adults would come out and sit. And then here's another Maddie P's house, which her name is not Maddie P, really. Her name is Maddie Pearl, but Maddie P is what she was always called. And this is her house. Her father is immortalized as Southport's gentle giant. There's a plaque at the funeral home, at the graveyard, the black graveyard, because of course they are segregated here, and there's a big old historical sign. And he was, I don't know how tall he was. I think it was 7 feet, maybe it was 9. I think it was 9. And I've seen as a child his wedding ring, how big it was, in one of his shoes. And there's actually something written on him in the Maritime Museum in downtown Southport. This is Aunt Olivia and Uncle Harry's house, which actually came later after I was older and in high school. This pink house used to be Miss Horton's house. Miss Horton was a 5th grade teacher. Miss Horton was a famous 5th grade teacher. She was very good at what she did. She had a passion for children, but she was also a very devout Christian. And even after they said no prayer in schools, she still had her students say the Lord's Prayer every morning and the Pledge of Allegiance before we started class. She was a wonderful example. Next to her house is Mother Gwen's house. Mother Gwen has been in Southport. She's not originally from Southport, but she is a staple in Southport. Everybody loves her. She takes care of everybody. She's just a wonderful, good-hearted person. Also, we're related by marriage. Now, this white house beside Maddie P's house belonged to my great-grandparents on my mother's side. Maverick and Elmer Davis. Babby is what we called her. She was my grandmother's mother. And then right beside Babby's house is what represents the oldest house of worship in Southport. And there is a historic plaque on the front of it. That's Mount Carmel AME Church, the church where I grew up. And this house right here, the Fred Moore house, belongs to, well, in my mind, it will always belong to Miss Mary Anderson. She was a mentor. She was the first person that I ever saw do like a spoken word thing. She used to do Paul Lawrence Dunbar readings, and She could just mesmerize. She was a storyteller. She could just mesmerize a crowd. And when I saw her do that for the first time, something in me kind of, I can't even describe the feeling, but I was mesmerized. And I said, when I grow up, I want to be just like her. Now, granted, I am not just like her. However, every time I perform in public, do poetry or preaching or whatever, I'm always reminded of her brilliance and the way that she could captivate a crowd. And she would usually start out by making people laugh. And once you get people to laugh, you can actually put something in their heads that might stick with them. So she was and I had the opportunity to work with her later on in my life and before she died. When I moved back home, I was doing some female conferences, woman empowerment stuff like I do, and she was one of my biggest supporters. She came to every single one. She just supported me to the maximum capacity, and when she passed, I was very, very sad, but I know that she lived her life in such a way that I'll see her again. Let's see what else. Yeah, there used to be a house on this corner, but it's gone now. And let's see what else. Oh, this brick house back here is Aunt Alice and Uncle Edgar's house. Uncle Edgar built this house. Not long after he built the house, he died, which was really kind of sad, but it's a beautiful, beautiful house. I'm not going to go around that corner, but this is still all relatives, mostly. Okay, this is a different and closer view of the church. Across the street is the Masonic Hall, where my daddy does his Masonic stuff, whatever that is. I'm just going to come around to the front of the church. Down this street, further down, is where St. George and Howe Street, Howe Street, intersect. That white building, if you can see it, that's directly in front of me, all of those buildings on that street used to be black-owned businesses. Of course, they're not now. Hello, gentrification. But all of those used to be black-owned businesses. There was a cleaners, a funeral home, a restaurant on the corner, just all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I want to do one more. I'm going to get close-up of the church, and then I'm going to do one more house, because this house is like, in our family, it's a big deal. So this is, the story with the church is that, and I'll get a picture of the plaque. Let me get closer. I got a bad knee, so this is going to be wobbly going up. Okay, the reason why it says Trinity United Methodist Church 1814 to 1889 is because this building, the frame of this building, was actually from a building that belongs to Trinity United Methodist Church. And my great, I believe that's enough greats, grandmother purchased that building, and they rolled it down here, pulled it with a carriage and rolled it on logs to this spot, and it became Mount Carmel AME Church. And yeah, so, and apparently it was a big deal. Well, not apparently, it obviously was a big deal. And they moved the building here, and it became known as Mount Carmel AME Church from 1890 to the present. So it does represent the oldest house of worship because it still has the original frame. And then I'm just going to walk down here and see if I can get a picture of the cornerstone. Like I said, I got a bad knee, so it's wobbly. When did our knees go from being left and right to good and bad? Who knows? I guess it happens with age. So that is the cornerstone. September 15th, 1890. So that's how old this church is. Now, this white house, this white two-story house, actually belongs to, it's still in our family, My cousin Alexis owns it now, but it belonged to the great, I think I got enough greats, grandmother who purchased this building and rolled it down here. This was her house. It's the Gore family home, and it is still in the family. And yeah, so that's my roots right here, Southport, North Carolina. Love this place. It is beautiful. It's a lot of things, but it's always been beautiful, and it still is. And I just wanted to share that. This is probably the longest video that I will ever make. So, yeah.